So far away, Lucas, what is your favourite creature from fiction that has the ability to change how it looks?
Well, it's got to be the T-1000, surely.
Hey, well, we already done an episode on the T-1000, so we can't talk about that today. Instead, we'll talk about my second favourite thing that can transform from fiction, the Thing. So far away, Lucas, how familiar are you with the Thing? Either the movie, the organism, or the terrible, terrible sequel? No, prequel. Yeah, it's a prequel. It sucks. Don't watch it.
Yeah, I'm aware of the movie's reputation, and I have spoke to you quite a lot about the John Carpenter 80s movie, which isn't the original one, right?
What do you got in mind, McCready?
It's not the original, but it's different enough from the Thing that it's an adaptation of, where people consider it to be its own thing, or at least I do. It's an adaptation of itself, an adaptation of a book called Who Goes There? From the 1950s. And in the 1950s version, it's nothing like the John Carpenter version, but it is based on the same thing. Because whenever you say, oh, The Thing is a great movie, it's like, oh, did you know it's based on an older film? It's like, yeah, but it changes it so much, it's basically its own beast. It's literally its own beast.
That thing's alive, sir. I saw it, I shot it, I hit it, I know it. Nothing happened. It just kept coming at me, making a noise like a cat mewing. Captain, it was awful. If you could have seen those hands and those eyes. Captain, you've got to do something about it. You've got...
Is it human or inhuman?
And then there's, I should say, that fantastic prequel that came out with there's a bunch of good actors in it, but just it seemingly is terrible.
It's not great for reasons which we might get to as we go through this video. But Lucas, you said you're not overly familiar with the Thing franchise, which is the beauty of Wiki Weekend, because I am, which is the beauty of Wiki Weekend. So for anyone out there who's unfamiliar with the format of this show, each episode is led by either myself or Lucas on a discussion about a subject we are interested in, and we use the wiki as a jumping off point, which means that, Lucas, you not knowing anything about the Thing is fine, because the wiki's got us there. So, we'll start, as we often do at the beginning, with the Thing, organism. The Thing is an extremely hostile, hive-minded, shape-shifting, extraterrestrial multi-organism and titular main antagonist of the 1982 science fiction film The Thing, its prequel, video games, and associated literature. A word that I'm really bad at pronouncing for some reason. Just one of those words. I always suck when I try to say the word literature. I always say it as literature. I had extra E's and T's in there, just like the Thing. I can't quite get I can't quite make myself make that noise.
Yeah, and I remember one of the things I studied in college at 16 when you only pick a few subjects was English lit, and everyone always says English lit because no one can be arsed saying literature all the time.
There's just a couple of words like that I'm really bad with, and long-time viewers of content that I've been with will know. One of them is literature. I'm not putting that on. The other one is, it's got the same sound in it, musculature. I had the extra ch to the end, and I don't know why. And I did mention that the Thing appears in a video game, and that's partly why we're talking about the Thing, the creature, today, because there's a remaster of that video game coming out, and that video game's really good. It has a really interesting series of systems in there to replicate the feeling of paranoia present in that original 1982 film, even though, as we've discussed, it's not original. Because when you say that, it's based on something else, it's an original enough idea. Okay.
Yeah, in the sense that it's a really commonly used tropey idea, but it's just the imposter among you, and that's why, for example, a game like Among Us is really fun, because just the general vibe of playing a video game where someone's the imposter and you're trying to figure out who it is, it's a really fun mechanic.
Yes, and that's the mechanic that's present in that PlayStation 2 era The Thing game, which John Carpenter himself has said, I consider it to be the true sequel to my work.
That's so weird when it's this random PS2 game.
But John Carpenter's really big into his video games. He often gets asked, we mentioned that the Terrible Thing prequel, he often gets asked, so how involved are you with the making of adaptations, sequels, prequels to your work? He said, well, my involvement involves putting my hand out, money falls into it, and then I go play video games or watch basketball.
Yeah.
Because John Carpenter is a legend.
Yes, the thing is actually about a monster from outer space. And we tried to make the king of the monster movies. And Rob Bottin did the special effects. And I think you're going to see a scene from that. And,
All right.
It'll be self-explanatory.
This is pretty scary, huh?
Yeah, I guess
All right.
so.
But Lucas, we're not done with the intro to the wiki just yet, because it continues. The original physical characteristics of the Thing and its motivations are entirely unknown, as it could have assimilated hundreds, if not thousands, of other species before it crash-landed upon Earth. And that's one of the things that makes the Thing so scary. You don't actually know what it's trying to do, or even what it looks like, because, yeah, even when it transforms into the weird amorphous blob monster, there's no telling that's not just another alien it assimilated on another planet millions of light years away.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like you have absolutely zero knowledge of what this thing is, what it looks like, or just like because it never talks as the Thing, I believe, right? It always just is talking as humans and stuff and pretending to be them. Like, you don't really know the motivations of why it's just tearing these people apart.
Yeah, there's only one example of a Thing communicating when it's been found out, and that is annoyingly in the prequel film. And it's where like the main girl in it figures out that someone's been assimilated and points it out and points a flamethrower at the Thing, and the Thing tries to reason with her.
Okay. What are you doing?
And you're not sure, is the Thing trying to reason with her genuinely? Is it trying to trick her? We don't know, because she immediately blows it with a flamethrower. So the single most interesting part of the film, that she gets to talk to a Thing, she just kills it instantly. God damn it, we had a chance to learn something about it.
So I think it's Mary Elizabeth Winstead in that movie.
I think it is, yeah.
And
I wouldn't be sure.
the only things I've seen of it are her just like stood in a room and dominating people and just being like, all of you fuckers get on the side and get out now.
She's the Kurt Russell of that movie, right down to threatening people with a flame.
Now you.
And we move on now, Lucas, to biology. Unlike most creatures, the Thing possesses no inherent standard anatomy that we know of. And that's the thing about this wiki entry. It keeps clarifying everything by saying that we know of. Because for all we fucking know, it might just have a standard form. It just never chooses to, adopt it.
It might just be an illustrious Hannah.
We don't. It could be a Hannah. It could be a sexy lady, like in Species. It could be a xenomorph. It could be a blob monster. It could be a billion different, just microscopic creatures all combined into one, just like Gestalt organism. We don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it such a fascinating creature to, feature in various bits of media. And I know earlier I said it would have been cool if, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character had the chance to talk to it. Although, thinking about it, that would probably been a bad idea because that film sucks and it would have ruined the mystique of the Thing. The fact that it has no motivation we're aware of is kind of what makes it cool.
Yeah, that's one of those things is you want to know more, but the moment they let you know more, as you say, it ruins the mystique of the Thing.
Yeah, it's just more frustrating to me that that's a really awesome moment in the film and it doesn't even get a chance to breathe. Both metaphorically and literally, because the moment the Thing says, no, wait, she just blows it with a flamethrower. It's at least let it talk a little bit. It would have been cool to see how a Thing reacts when it knows it's been found out and see what it tries to do.
The scary thing about that, though, is you're then letting the potential of it to, talk you out of killing it.
And that reminds me of a quote that just sets my teeth on edge and makes me just feel really, really uncomfortable. And it's about AI. And it's some AI scientist. He's talking about various AI just doomsday scenarios. And they bring up the classic one of Skynet. And it's if a Skynet-type situation occurs, is the way to avoid that by locking the AI in a room and not letting it out? And the scientist says something that just made me really, really uncomfortable. The worry wouldn't be that the AI would jump onto the internet like Ultron. The worry would be that it would just convince you to let it go. And that idea terrifies me, that the AI would convince you that it's in your best interest to let it go, and then it'd fuck you up.
Ava!
Go back to your room.
If I do, are you ever gonna let me out?
Well, that's why Ex Machina was such an interesting movie, is because the entire concept of Ex Machina is just, can this AI convince this lonely dude to let her out? And the moment he's not useful to her anymore, he's just trapped, and it's like, well...
And I would love to talk more about Ex Machina, but we already did that a few months ago now. So if you want to see a long-form conversation about the film Ex Machina and why it terrifies me, you can go watch the episode that's linked somewhere on screen right now. But, you know, the wiki continues. The Thing is a colonial organism whose assimilation instructions are carried out on the genetic level. The Thing's shape-shifting nature means that the biology can be the same as the organism it has replicated or is in the process of replicating. And one of the scariest moments in that 1982 The Thing movie is when they catch up to a guy who's halfway through being assimilated. He's not quite there, and you see him or you see the Thing stumbling in the distance, and they run up and they catch up to it, and the guy goes up thinking it's his friend who's been injured, and he backs up immediately and goes, "It's not him. It's not Bennings." And Bennings looks up, or the Bennings thing looks up, and you see it's got monster claws. Because it's been found out. And what it does is it just sits there and it roars. And the sound of its roar is fucking horrifying. And according to John Carpenter, what they did is they mixed in just a mass of various animal cries and just... Do you know, when they make a monster roar in a movie, they generally just gorilla sounds, a bear, remix them, play them backwards, scale them up and down, all that sort of thing. They do all of that, but then somewhere in there, supposedly, is that actor screaming in agony, mixed in somewhere. In the sound of the Thing, as if he's still alive and still conscious within the Thing. But he's been drowned out by all the other thousands of organisms that the Thing has taken over, because that's what that roar represents. That's every creature the Thing has ever assimilated, screaming in agony to be let go. And that is horrifying.
And that's the thing, right? If he's half being assimilated, there's half them left to do that screaming. He, as you say, he's still... a little bit there. It was
there's the very remnants of this guy, just the last vestiges of his humanity, just being overwhelmed by this creature from beyond the stars. Or at least, that's the interpretation you can read from it, because you could just as easily read into it that he's fucking dead and the Thing just, his vocal cords aren't yet fully formed. But that's John Carpenter's explanation of what that sound is. But, he's very keen on people having their own interpretation of the movie, so if anyone out there reads that scene a different way, that is entirely valid. But I am inclined to believe and listen to John Carpenter's interpretation that is every creature the Thing is assimilated screaming for help, and help isn't coming. A flamethrower is.
Obviously, we were talking earlier about the fact that knowing the motivations of the Thing would ruin the mystique of it, and it's so funny that obviously the ending of the movie would also be ruined if you didn't just leave it open-ended like John Carpenter did.
Yep, and oddly enough, the prequel does ruin the ending.
Right.
Because people don't know, if you like Lucas, you're only passingly familiar with the Thing. The ending is Kurt Russell and Keith David are just sat in the snow and they just toast to their mutual destruction because they think they've killed the Thing, but they can't quite be sure. And neither man has the strength to fight off the other if they happen to be a thing. So they just sit there and drink and just fades to black.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens.
And for years and years and years, John Carpenter was asked, so was Kurt Russell a thing? Was Keith David a thing? And he always answered, what do you think? But then in the prequel, they established that when the Thing takes someone over, it can't replicate artificial additions to the body. So think fillings, piercings, tattoos. It can't replicate those. And
you know how I knew you were human? When you showed up back at base?
No.
Your earring.
Keith David's character has an earring, which now clarifies that he is absolutely not a thing, ruining the ambiguity of the original ending, making that prequel even worse, because now it retroactively ruins the original.
And that's the thing, especially with it being a prequel movie that's got nothing to do with John Carpenter and was like 20 odd years, removed from the original. It's like, you can just kind of ignore that movie.
But the fact, though, that it is considered to be canon and it literally ruins the original, because now the ambiguity is gone, because 100% for certain that child is not a thing.
However, you don't know that was John Carpenter's original, vision of that movie, so they don't know that either, presumably, and they may have, ruined it in canon, but it doesn't ruin that movie.
The movie's still great, but it's that thing of, if you want to treat the movies as this established canon, then they end up ruining it, and I fucking hate that. It says, and before I move on, I will be remiss if I did not mention, speaking of that moment with the Bennings thing, the film Annihilation. Are you familiar at all, Lucas, with the film Annihilation? Because it sports a moment that's very similar.
I don't think I know of this movie, no.
So Annihilation's like the Keira Knightley sci-fi horror one. They're quite similar. No. And there's a moment in it where they just go in, basic premises, they go into this weird, alien just anomaly on Earth, and it causes all of, the biological life to just freak the fuck out. They walk up and they, find, for example, a person who's been fused with mushrooms and is now just a mushroom person stuck to the wall, screaming. And at halfway point through the movie, a bear comes in. It's not a bear. It's a bear that's been fused with one of their teammates who disappeared. And every time the bear roars, you can hear the sound of their friend screaming from within the bear. Because they've been forcibly, just bonded to the bear on a genetic level. And all you hear every time the bear roars is them just screaming for help. And it's horrifying.
Oh yeah, that doesn't sound nice.
Not great. And I guess another film where something similar to that happens is... Did you end up watching Nope?
No.
Okay. No. Oddly enough, ironically enough, Nope, he didn't watch Nope. And there's just a moment where a bunch of people get, sucked up by the alien craft, or what you think is the alien craft. Perhaps it might be something altogether different. And just... While it's flying around, you hear people screaming because they're still inside. And then, suddenly, just it all stops at once, and then just it starts raining blood from the sky.
Oh, no.
Because all of them just get all squished together at once. But one of the details about that is that Jordan Peele, who directed it, when he was mixing that sound, he got people to just scream as if they were having fun, and then scream as if they were terrified for their life. And he mixed those two sounds together, which is what makes that noise so unsettling. And do you know how there are just certain noises that don't hit the ear right? And even when they're lost among a crowd, you can still pick them out, because just... humans are naturally predisposed to not like those sounds. For example, a baby crying.
Yeah.
And just one of the things that you can hear very distinctly, children screaming for their mum, lost in that sea of voices, that's trapped inside the alien. God. And I hate it. And I hate it so much, but it makes that moment so unsettling. Very similar to the thing of when you hear it screaming, somewhere in there is a guy.
Just the one.
We don't know how many fucking guys are in there, do we? That's the point. We don't know how many he could have landed anywhere on the universe, right? And continuing on with the biology of the thing has the ability to reconstitute itself. And continuing with the biology of the thing has the ability to reconstitute itself following immense damage and invulnerable to most conventional forms of attack. However, it is vulnerable to fire and potentially molecular acid, since they both destroy the creature at a cellular level. And one of the things that's interesting about the thing is that Kurt Russell figures out, we can burn them. They don't know if that kills it. That's just his best guess of the best way to stop it.
Yeah, and I always find it when it's like the explanation of something that's like weak to fire or heat, and it's like, well, at some point everything's weak to fire.
Yeah, there's like most things don't like being on fire, but like even that doesn't really stop the thing, because they establish that when they burn one of the things, they're cutting into it. And it's like its insides are still alive, like the cells inside are still alive and trying to survive. It's just they think fire stops it, and stopping it and then just burying it in the ice is about as good as we're going to get.
Yeah, if you just make it so that it's frozen, then that's close enough to stopping it, right?
Yeah, and freezing it doesn't kill it, but it does mention here that the creature is vulnerable to the cold, although it is very tolerant of extreme, differentials in both heat and cold. But extreme cold for long durations will cause it to have to force itself to go into hibernation.
And then it's not Kurt Russell's problem, it's future people's problem.
It's somebody else's problem, yes. And, speaking of the assimilation, Lucas, the Thing is a shape-shifting organism, but it must first come into contact with its host in order to begin the process of analysing and copying its cellular structure. To do this, the cells begin digesting and replicating the host, eventually taking over the entire body. The Thing will only assimilate freshly killed or still living prey. Any organism that has been dead for an extended period of time will be ignored by it. It is unclear why this is the case, however it is theorised by fans. This may be due to it being largely ineffective to more intelligent prey if it mimics a member of their society known to have been killed. But again, we don't know this. It could be that the Thing is smart enough to recognise that, because, when it's replicating a person, it has the approximation of human intelligence, if not greater than human intelligence, due to its, thousands of, organisms worth of knowledge that it has on a genetic cellular level. Or it could just be that it doesn't like eating things that are dead. We don't know.
I mean, it's one of those of maybe it is just a case of, to be able to copy something effectively, it needs to know how the body, runs while it's still alive. It could just be something like that.
And the fact that we don't know, and it leads to all this speculation and these fan theories, is why I think the film and the franchise just enjoys success and just very heated discussion online to this day. Because there's no doubt someone watching this who disagrees with my interpretations of the Thing, its anatomy and how it works, which, great, that's the whole point, that the film invites curiosity and discussion.
It does, yeah. And I think just one of those of, well, a lot of the reason that I know, and I've seen a fair amount of the movie without watching it, is just that even to this day it's discussed in terms of special and visual effects.
Yes, which we've not really gotten too much into, because this wiki entry is an in-universe discussion of the Thing as a creature. But yeah, I can talk about the special effects. They are widely considered to be some of the best in the industry. Not all, largely done by a special effects wizard, Rob Bottin.
To do the movie. And one of the crucial decisions we had to make was on the special effects, and whether or not to hire, what kind of an effects person to go with, and what kind of a concept to go with. And I chose Rob Bottin.
I saw Halloween, and I instantly became a John Carpenter fan.
The exception being, I believe, it's The Thing right at the end, which was handled by Stan Winston Studios, but he didn't want a credit on the movie because he thought it would undermine the work of Rob Bottin.
Right.
So he refused credit on it, and Rob Bottin did everything else by himself. And there's a really, he tells the story and he's in good spirits when he's telling it, but you can tell he's pissed off. When they were doing the effect of the guy whose stomach rips open and the Thing pops out and grabs everybody. Apparently that caught fire halfway through production and exploded. And there's there's a behind the scenes clip of Rob Bottin talking about it, and he's yeah, it just caught fire and exploded, so I had to redo the entire thing. And he's he's telling the story in good spirits, but he's fucking pissed because he now has to go remake the entire thing because it caught fire and exploded.
One of the creatures had this ooze in it and stuff that was supposed to come out and change into another shape. And it blew up. And it was $60,000 down the drain, so we had to go back to point one.
I think that's the one, right, where it's man, how did they achieve this special effect of his entire body ripping apart, but then still his face looks convincing, and it's just they just put his face into frame and then basically put all of the prosthetics in front of his body as he just sat to the side.
It's the actor lying underneath the table, and they use prosthetics to make it look as if his body's on the table so they can tear it open.
I was inside the examining table that my body was supposed to be lying on. so that my head was out. It was really my head, my neck, my shoulders, and my arms, and everything else was the model.
Similarly, when his body rips open and like bites that guy's arms off, they built a realistic mask of that actor's face and put it onto a guy who has no arms. And just for a second, and they then have that guy wearing that mask with no arms wave around not having arms, just for a second. That's all you need to, like, you know, just get across what's happened.
Clear. Yeah.
And there's very few of the effects in the film that don't still hold up. And I think the only one is like the really bad dummy shot. Annoyingly, in that scene, where like I think it's Windows who gets grabbed by the thing, and the thing just has waving him around in midair, and they have like a wide shot where it's in the background. You can clearly tell it's a dummy. And it's the one shot in the film that doesn't look good, but you kind of forgive like Rob Bottin for not making it look flawless, because the guy was literally sleeping in the studio under a desk.
Yeah, and it's wild, like, how good some of those look over 40 years later.
They still hold up. It's because the actors really had something to react to. And I think, like, you know, just the absolute best effect is the dog thing, because there's just so much detail on it. It's like, it invites you to watch the film multiple times because there's so much like random detail just around the dog thing in particular. For example, like when just part of it opens up like a flower, and like the weird tendril comes out and grabs somebody. Like Rob Bottin loves talking about that in interviews, or he did before he like kind of dropped off from Hollywood, where he calls that like just the dirty flower or something like that, because the flower petals are all made of dog tongues. You only see it for a split second, but he knows it's there. I can see Lucas getting really off. It's like, do you regret bringing up the special effects?
No, I don't. Oh god, like, I love the fact that a movie that's so old can, like, you know, just incite those feelings of like, oh god, that dog looks so horrible, and it's like, yeah, it looks that good.
Yep, and I guess we have to give a shout out as well to Jed. So Jed is the dog who plays the dog thing, and is widely considered the best performance by a dog. And you know, there's a lot of competition for that, because there's all those Air Bud movies where the dog's like doing overhead kicks and like dunking basketballs. But Jed's performance is genuinely unsettling, and it really showcases why the thing is such just an enigmatic, mysterious, I'm not even going to say villain, just creature for a movie, because the way the dog moves is it's too perfect. It moves too silently. Like, you expect a dog, like, when, you know, to bound, to be excited, right? To, like, jump around or wag its tail. But when the dog thing is walking around, it moves just with, like, this inhuman precision. This not inhuman, I guess, just in canine precision.
Yeah.
And it just, like, it moves with absolute economy of motion in mind. And just, it sits so perfectly still. And, like, the moment where it walks into the cage with all the other dogs and just sits down. And just doesn't move, because it doesn't have to, because it's not trying to fool people, and it knows the dogs are too stupid to be able to like raise the alarm, or like, they lack the ability to raise the alarm with the humans besides just barking.
Yeah, and like, I don't know what they did to train that dog, but they must have had some like bloody good treats to make it that well behaved.
It's just the fact it just doesn't move. That's what's really freaky about it. The fact it just does not move. Like, it acts like a dog when it needs to, but the moment, like, humans, like, are not in the environment, it just stops moving. It reminds me a little bit of the film The Guest. Have you seen The Guest?
No.
Okay, so The Guest is, it's not quite a horror movie, although it's, like, you know, quite a horrific concept, but it's about this just weirdo guy who just joins a family as their guest. And it's really unclear what he is. Like, because he talks about being a soldier. And it's like, okay, is he a soldier? Is he lying? Is he a serial killer? Like, they make hints to he might be a robot or like some sort of like a military experiment gone wrong.
I mean, there was a draft of the script where he was more overtly. I don't share this often, but it's long enough now that I can start talking about these things. I mean, there was a draft of the script where he was more overtly kind of a cyborg.
Okay.
And something the actor does is whenever nobody's in the room with him, he just sits perfectly still. And there's an interview with a writer where he talks about how, that was a deliberate decision. Because the idea is that when he doesn't need to be present, when he doesn't need to fool people by, just affecting his, quite disarming, charming facade, just sits perfectly still, because that would waste energy.
Yeah, that was literally it. Yeah.
Sits on that bed staring at the wall, and that's when you're like, what is up with this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea there was again that like he just wouldn't expend calories if he didn't have to.
Yeah.
And it's just a really good performance. Now I have to double check the actor's name, because the actor does give a very good performance as this weirdo, maybe robot, maybe weird military Superman. I'm not describing the film very well because it's been a while since I watched it, but I recommend people go track it down if they're able to. And if I have been able to sell it in a way that makes it sound interesting, because it is a very good movie.
Well, maybe you prefer this.
And Lucas, the wiki entry continues for many, many thousands of words. So I'll go through the various subheadings now, and we'll cover just one more before we move on to the closing part of the video. So we have here replication, instincts, intelligence, countermeasures, and trivia.
Is there any just interesting trivia?
Okay, let's go to the trivia then. So, trivia. It has been stated that not even director John Carpenter himself knows precisely when each character in his movie was originally assimilated by the Thing. In fact, for the first assumed assimilation by the Malamute in the US base showed it walking into the bedroom of a silhouetted figure played by a stunt actor just to keep his identity ambiguous. That's when Jed the dog walked into someone's room and they just got a random stunt actor so you couldn't identify from silhouette alone who it's gone snuck up on to kill and assimilate.
It's very funny because obviously a lot of filmmakers would have every single bit of the timeline completely plotted out, and John Carpenter's like, eh.
Well, that's one of the things they talk about when they were making that prequel movie. They said they scrubbed through the 1982 movie with a fine-tooth comb because it's set on the Norwegian research base, which they briefly go to, and just when they go to it, shit very clearly went wrong, and that's what kicks the plot of the 1982 film into motion. And they didn't really give that much of a shit about what they were doing. They just wanted things to look aesthetically pleasing and interesting. For example, when they're walking through the base, there's just an axe in the wall. And when John Carpenter's been asked, what happened with that axe? I don't fucking know. We just got a set dressing in to make the place look like shit went really bad really fast. And that's what they did. And it looks cool, right? But for the prequel movie, they had to figure out how to get that axe into that wall.
Oh,
and they had to work backwards because John Carpenter, he said he didn't really care that much about it. He cared about the movie, but how that axe got into the wall is not important to the story that he told. But the people making the prequel thought that it was, and went to painstaking efforts to put that axe into that wall at that exact angle that it is in the the original. And it's for fuck's sake.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, it's kind of missing the point, isn't it? As he says, just it's more about just creating the vibe that shit's gone down than necessarily giving a crap about why an axe is in a wall.
And it's what makes that film so frustrating to watch, because they went to that much effort to slavishly recreate those scenes from the original, but then seemingly didn't care about the tone of the original, right? And it's and then you mentioned special effects earlier. The thing everyone knows if you watch my content in the past about this movie is that initially it was Amalgamated Dynamics, I believe, did a bunch of practical effects for the movie, and then they were literally just painted over with CGI in post-production because someone from the studio came in, looked at the early effects, when they look like they're from an 80s movie. It's well, yeah, of course they do.
Because we're trying to make a prequel to an early 80s movie.
And they just brought in this random CGI studio and literally painted over the effects of CGI, and they look awful.
That is one thing I've seen about that movie is just some of the visual effects of showcasing, like, this is one of the worst uses of CGI, like, in a decent budget movie of all time, yeah.
They had to do them at the last minute, and what makes them worse, like, some of them look okay. They're not great, but they're not bad. But it's more that, you know, they're painted over what were going to be phenomenal practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of other things that the studio made them change. For example, speaking of practical effects, towards the end of the prequel, they're going through the crashed alien ship. Originally, they were to come across an alien corpse that had seemingly killed itself, which was supposed to be a hint to the fact that maybe the thing had escaped, and to escape the fate that befalls anyone who encounters it, the aliens who were piloting that ship killed themselves. They also had some really cool, like alien body mock-ups. But the studio didn't like them. They thought they looked weird, so they made them replace them with a CGI cube.
Oh.
So they had these like 15-foot tall, immaculately modelled alien corpses that was gonna like, invite your curiosity about what the fuck is that thing? Holy shit, that's cool as fuck, and then just go straight past it. To invite your curiosity and make you discuss the film at length. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. Did that alien hang themselves because they didn't want to fight the thing? Or did the thing escape? Was that a thing that got killed by the other aliens on board? We don't know. Instead, it's a CGI cube.
Great. But, like, yeah, I do like that idea of coming across a bunch of aliens that, yeah, I should say, maybe just, they had the thing captured and were doing experiments on it, or it was imprisoned or something, and then it got out and they all just were like, nope.
Just the idea that the events of the movie had played out on an alien spaceship. Or had they? Because you don't know, you don't get the full picture. Much in the same way when, Kurt Russell's going through a Norwegian base the first time. You only get glimpses of what might have happened, and it's up to you to just assume from what you see and make up a scenario in your head. And seemingly the prequel movie was like, okay, but what about if we showed you what happened? It's like, but then if you show us what happened, then all the cool things we're imagining definitely didn't happen.
Yep. A lot of the time it's just a lot better to let your imagination run wild than to over-explain things.
It sucks. Speaking of overly explaining things, it mentions that, even though that the identity of the person that Jed the dog goes in and assimilates is deliberately ambiguous, fan discussion, of course, is rife online. So it can be assumed that it's either Palmer or Norris, although arguments towards Blair and Fuchs are not unheard of, though the Shadow does not have facial hair as Fuchs does, and is not balding as Blair is. But again, it's deliberately ambiguous. It's been speculated that Who Goes There, the short story that inspired the Thing movie, was itself inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's novella At the Mountains of Madness, in which an Antarctic research team uncovers a cryogenically preserved Eldar thing, which thaws out and attacks them. Which, I guess it would be right. It's very cosmic horror-esque, this idea of this unknowable entity from beyond the stars that is just beyond our comprehension.
Yeah. It's like, I would presume at that point that it's taken inspiration because just that little summarization of the plot sounds extremely familiar, right?
And it mentions here that, speaking of writing, there is an award-winning, non-canon short story, The Things, by Peter Watts, that tells part of the story of the original movie from the perspective of the creature. And it is pretty decent. I'll put a link to it below if anyone is curious. It's not a long read. It's like 30, 40 pages, I think. It is kind of interesting, but just the last line always really makes me cringe, because it's really well written. And it's like very viscerally written, very florid. And then I think the last line is something like from the Thing's perspective of, I will rape them into submission.
Oh.
And it's just the specific wording of that always, like, I'm reading it, it's like, oh, it's actually pretty decent, and then the last line immediately soured me on the whole thing. I'm like, you could have used any other wording.
Yeah.
That's the thing about The Thing, is that there's no real sexual overtones to the assimilation process whatsoever. It's not like the alien from Alien, which is kind of funny. I'm saying The Thing about The Thing and the alien from Alien, where that is very, very obviously has a lot of like sexual overtones in there, like as just handed down by H.R. Giger, the original designer. And then just to have like that specific wording at the end of this novella, and it's like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, because it's just like this weird, just horrible blob that decides to tear everyone apart. That's all it needs to be.
That wording just always makes it's just really uncomfortable to read, because the whole point is that the creature's motivations are entirely unknown. And that specific, just again, that specific phrasing just doesn't feel earned, in my opinion. But then the final bit of trivia here is, on the director's commentary for the 2011 prequel, the director states that he believes the things have no true form since they are microscopic in nature, as I mentioned earlier, but that's just one theory. Film... No, we're not doing that. No. We're not doing that. This is Wiki Weekends is its own thing. And if you would like to continue the discussion we have had in this video, you can do so in the link you'll find below to our Discord. And also in our Discord, Lucas, what will people find? If they want to, like, you know, share pictures of their pet, their very well-behaved pet, like Jed, the dog who played the dog thing, they can share them
Thing of the week.
Yeah, well, the thing of the week. Where could they share such pictures, Lucas, within the Discord?
Well, of course, I just insinuated like thing of the week. We have pet of the week, where just you can submit pictures and, you know, your name of your pet and a fun story to go along with the picture if you'd like, and you get to... I'll do that again. Well, as I insinuated, it's not thing of the week, but it is pet of the week, where people can submit their pets if they're a patron on our Discord, and then everybody can go to the pet of the week channel and just like react to pictures, and whichever gets, you know, the most reactions each week becomes the pet of the week and goes in a starring place on our podcast among us.
And I'm now just thinking, right, like The Thing, it's quite smart. Obviously, it's got the collective intelligence of like potentially billions of other organisms. It should have just stayed as a dog, right? If it just stayed as a dog, it'd be fine.
Well, that's the question, though, is what does the thing want?
I guess it wants to escape. We do know that it builds like a spaceship, so it definitely wants to escape. But does it want to escape because it keeps getting attacked every time it reveals itself? We don't know. That's the beauty of it. But I think its plan would have probably worked a lot better if it just stayed as a dog.
Right. Yeah. Like, it is always just one thing, right? It can't multiply.
No, it can. That's the whole point, right? Every time it gets split apart, each individual part becomes another thing. And that's the worry that they have. Of the moment it escapes, you don't know how many... Like, Kurt Russell even says that, of like, you know, I know that you're not all things, because if you were, you'd jump me. So I know at least some of you are human. But I don't know how many of you are human, because we don't know how long the process takes, how violent it is, whether there'd be any sort of clues. And the only clue we can find is, I believe every individual part of the thing will try to escape when it's threatened. That's why he takes like the blood samples and the great scene you get where like, tss, and the blood tries to escape.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah. And that was more my question, because surely it could just kind of like blow itself up into a million pieces and just become a million things to take them down.
That's like, you know, another fan theory of when Kurt Russell thinks he's killed the thing by blowing it with dynamite. We don't know that he killed it. That's just what he just assumes that he has. We don't know if blowing it with dynamite would make like a million things, or if like, he damaged it enough where it can't reconstitute, or if it is in the process of reconstitution, and 5 seconds after the film fades to black, 800 dog things came out with tentacles out of their mouths. Like The Simpsons, like, we're going to do some of the dogs, or the bees, or dogs with bees in their mouth that shoot dogs, or so that shoot bees and they bark. We don't know if that's what the thing turned into.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that in the comics, though, which I don't think are canon, or they were for a little bit and then they're not, and then they kind of were again. R.J. McCready survives, and then he gets, like, understandable, just real bad PTSD, and becomes immensely paranoid about anything that he thinks is a thing. And there's a great moment in one of the comics where he's just he's in like a research base. Like, look, we know you underwent some pretty traumatic shit, but there's no things here. He's like, well, that's what a thing would say. So we know, but there's no things here. And he looks out into the field and he sees some sheep. He's like, there's a sheep out there. there's definitely a thing somewhere in that big herd of sheep. Like, those sheep aren't things. And it's like, no, I know for a fact there's a thing out. It's like, MacReady? No, there's not. And then later in the night, he sneaks out with a machine gun and machine guns all the sheep, and it turns out one is a thing.
Yeah.
But you just get the great panel of him just machine gunning sheep, and the sheep like, why is this happening?
Oh, God. It's just... That's the thing, though. It's the thing about the thing is, yeah, of course, you never know. And why would the thing ever admit that it's out there?
And one of the really scary things about the thing is that individual forms of the thing, they are just traitors by nature, and they will sell themselves out immediately. Like, they will sell out other things if it means they get to survive.
Right.
So numerous moments in the movies and associated fiction where a thing will just pile on when that guy's a thing. Okay, let's get him, because the thing knows that it's a good way to remove doubt from itself by placing it on somebody else. Like Alex Mercer in the Prototype games can use the Patsy maneuver where it's him, it's Alex Mercer. It's like, no, I'm not. The thing can do that.
Guys, that's him! I think I got it in my sights. I think, sir.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's a good way of avoiding suspicion, and if they think there's only one thing in the room, and they kill a thing, then the other one still gets to keep going on.
It gets to survive by, selling out. It's like just the idea that the thing just... It has snitching embedded in it on a genetic level. Just on a genetic level, it's programmed to snitch. Just the snitch finger. It's great. Cheers, everybody.